What's going on, people? Welcome to the channel once again. This is Slick Mason. I just wanted to discuss a topic here that I think of a lot of artists maybe probably have an idea of transitioning from an artist to a producer, or at least doing both now because let's say maybe beats are getting really expensive to buy, and you want to make sure that you control the creative process as much as possible, and you don't have the finances to go ahead and buy those really good sounding and expensive beats. And also those beats that you go online and find on YouTube and anywhere on Epidemic Sound or whatever it is, they do get stale, and you want to come up with your own sound, right? So I'll just let you know certain things that have happened in the past with my experience as far as this is concerned, and then you guys can chime in and let me know what worked for you as well. I'm also still on my music journey, pretty much trying to gain more of these skills so I can put out quality music and put out the best possible work that I can, and also controlling the creative process as much as I can. So let's get into it. So moving from mic to machine. The mic could also be considered a machine, but you know what that pretty much means is that you're moving from the focal point, which is writing bars, to the architect, right? So building the entire sonic landscape from scratch, right? So what I had to do in order to get into this world and understand it, the world of production, was I actually went back to school. I went to Trebas Institute, and I decided to learn some producing and music production, right? So you may have to do that, but what I would suggest nowadays is that there's a lot of information online, a lot of producers, a lot of people who know stuff that you could learn stuff from, right? So the platforms that I decided to use when I was transitioning were Reason, right? So I decided to go with Reason as my main production DAW, and then I decided to use ProTools as the other DAW that I would use for recording and tracking. So what I would do is produce all my tracks in Reason because I like all the modules there, and you can learn to craft your own sounds with synths and different drum machines, and without having to buy a lot of expensive equipment to produce those sounds. Another thing is that you don't necessarily have to depend on samples. Now you may have to learn to play instruments, right, or at least play the piano, right? Because once you learn a bit of music theory and you learn what the different key signatures are and how to use a circle of fifths, then you can find more creative ways to make the music that you would like to hear. And like also the creative process gets more fun because now you're finding new things that you wouldn't have found if you didn't know this music theory. Now there's also just going at it without knowing the music theory, which is also fun, but I think it's nice to have both. That way you could get in there and just have a sandbox and like mix things together, or you can recognize, oh, this is this kind of arrangement. I could probably mix in this thing that I learned from this YouTuber, right? So there's different ways that you could use the different tools in your toolbox and then create something that's unique to you, right? And then that makes music more entertaining, so, or at least more entertaining to create. Another thing is that you don't use those type beats. So no more type beats, which is the freedom to no longer waiting for someone else's instrumental, right? So when you're creating the exact sound you hear in your head, or at least something that's close to it, sometimes actually what I've found is that the sound that you hear in your head, right, could be a certain sound, but then you have a different instrument that you hear when you're producing the song, and it's like, oh, that sounds even better than I thought it would sound. And it's sometimes music can take a different direction, right? So that's something you'd probably encounter where it's like, okay, I'm not really feeling the vibe of what was in my head as much as what's going on right now that I'm hearing outside, right? So then your music starts to take the sound starts to take a different shape, and then you come up with something unique that could still work with what you were thinking, but you wouldn't have pretty much come up with that if you didn't go ahead and produce it. Now another thing is that there's a vocal shift that happens too as well when you're going from being just a rapper to being a producer, is that now you're gonna have to think of melodies, and you might start even getting into a bit of singing, right? So your creative mind starts thinking of songs differently and different arrangements that you could do. Sometimes you could sing a part, right, and be really, like T-Pain and be like Aretha Franklin and all of them, and try to hit those kind of notes. Sometimes you may just need to kind of sing rap it, have a mix of both singing and rapping, and sometimes you may have to rap it, but you just try to fit certain sounds together much more creatively when you could do all these different things. Now, I'm not saying that you should learn all these different things, but be good at what you're good at, right? I think that's something that we get caught up in, where we start trying to learn a whole bunch of different things, and then we're not really honing in on certain skills that we're good at. So, for example, I'm good at writing, right? I love writing. I love writing songs more than anything that has to do with music. But at the same time, the production part of it is also entertaining to me. Now, I'm not really good at the production part because I just started producing about 4 or 5 years ago, and what I've learned during that journey is that you just got to keep creating and seeing what you're good at. I have become better at certain things, though. I've become better at singing. I have become better at production as well, right? So I just need to continue training those creative muscles and continuing to put out quality material, at least the best that I think it is, right? So that's another thing that could be a benefit of branching, or actually adding on to your tool set. Another thing is that another point here, I'm just kind of going through the points here that I have, is that it kills, there's killing the ego, right? Shifting from how to sound on this to analytically listening to an arrangement, a pocket, and the overall emotional journey of the song, right? So before, when I just wrote lyrics, I only listened to, just the beat itself and how I could rhyme over it. That's it. That's all I ever listened to. But I didn't listen to things sonically to go like, oh, I'd like to add this element to it, or I'd like to change how the saxophone sounds here. I'd like to move this part of the arrangement to this part, because then it changes the energy, right? And makes my chorus sound much bigger than it is when it's on the verse part, right? And actually, when you have that creative control and you can move things around, right? There's buying exclusive beats and you're limited to the instrumentation that you have. But when you create something from scratch, what happens is you can add or subtract certain elements and not have the limitation of like offending somebody who produced it, or right, who pretty much gave you the beat and it's exclusive to you, right? So those are certain limitations that once they're gone, you don't have to deal with that anymore. It's full creative freedom, right? And that's pretty much one of the things, freedom. You get the freedom to do and create what you want and create something sonically. So it's very rewarding, in my opinion. Another thing is that the technical grind, going back to zero to learn the DAW, plugins, mixing, and basic music theory for years, or just writing lyrics. So when you go back and learn those technical things, it really builds your character as an artist, right? So even before you step into the studio, your mind has already figured out, hey, this is how I picture something sounding. So before I learned production, I used to think of a certain sound and not know what instrument it's gonna be, right? And not know how long it would take me to make something like that. Right? So I'd get into the studio, I'd talk to a producer or an engineer, and they'd have a hard time kind of interpreting what I wanted exactly, right? So when I started producing, different world. I go into the studio already knowing what I need to do, right? And that helps the producer and the engineer that's there, because they can easily go like, oh, this is this, okay, right? So I'm speaking their language, and it's the sessions are stress-free, less painful for them. In fact, when I book a session, they just go like, yeah, I'll do it, because they know it's gonna take maybe like within 4 hours we could bang out like 5 songs easily. Right, because I go in there, I've probably memorized the song already. I've probably had the stems already organized and stuff. I've already sent them whatever they need. I already know how I want things to sound in the mix, right? I gave them a reference mix, so they already have all the plugins and everything ready to go. So it helps you be more prepared as an artist and make it easier on your engineers and on your producers, right? When you get in there, so the creative energy can be focused on making the song that much better than it would be. It would be less of a hassle to go into trying to figure things out and tinkering with things. Before you go to the studio, you've already tinkered with everything that you could possibly tinker with, and then when you get there, it's just a matter of banging out the song and then going like, okay, what's left to make this thing go over the top, like just to make it pop, right? So that's an advantage that you could have in your toolbox right there. Another thing is that there's a dual threat advantage that you get. So why being a former rapper makes you a better producer? You know exactly how to build beats that give a vocalist room to breathe, right? So that's one thing that I realized about producers, is that they have a certain sound that they go for, and a certain type of, some people have like an arrangement that they go with, where it's like, bro, I don't have enough room for my verse here. Like, this is not making sense to me here, right? And especially when you're just releasing beats online, you don't have that much creative freedom. You got to leave something either as is, or you have to inquire with somebody before you change anything, and that's a pretty big limitation there. And if you need more room, like you need 16 bars, you need 24, you need whatever to get your thought process, or to get your point across, you can't really just do that immediately, right? So, but you have to send it back to them in order to see whether they can allow you to do that to their sound. So it's a pretty much you get those extra cooks out the kitchen, and now it's like, okay, I got this here. If I need a producer, I'll call him in, and I'll be like, hey, let's make these drums punchier here, whatever. But you've already worked out the core structure of what you need, and that pretty much cuts down on all the time that's spent tinkering around with things trying to create something. So that's another thing you could think about. Creative freedom, like I mentioned before, huge, right? I could do anything I want. I can change it from a pop song to funk. I could change it to trap. I could change it to R&B. I could do whatever the hell I want, right? And that's the power of being able to transition from just being a rapper or a singer to a producer. Now you're thinking of things sonically. Now, another point that I don't have that I didn't write down here is, or at least I didn't type here, is that when you have that ability to listen to things sonically and can make decisions on the fly and can move arrangements around, and you have a production background as a rapper or a singer, what happens is other artists start to consult you, and then now you have another skill set that you could bring to the table. So they invite you to their sessions, right? They want you to listen to their records and figure out what it is that you can add to it. So that increases the amount of opportunities you have to get writing credits on tracks or producer credits, right? Even just contributing one thing like drums or one line, right? There's people out there who do that, right? There's the lady from Floetry, I forget what her name is, but she did that when she did that Cry Me a River, those extra vocals on Cry Me a River with Justin Timberlake. I never knew that for years, but it sounded, it's like, oh my God, I was like, yo, this guy's a genius. That was a proper thing to do right there, man. That's pretty cool. But then you find out, oh, it's the lady from Floetry who did it all these years. That's amazing, right? Or who is it? There's another producer for Interscope, I think. Why am I forgetting her name? She did that song, What's Going On, and she's the one who wrote the songs for. She wrote some songs for Pink, some songs for Gwen Stefani, right? And you'd look like you listen to her other songs, and it's like, bro, I don't know how she came up with that, but those are things she came up with in 15 minutes and just pretty much sold them to them. Like, hey, like you could take this one; it could be a hit for you. Sia also has that talent. Sia did wrote Diamonds for Rihanna, right? And that was a big hit. Sia has her own version of it, but because Sia isn't Rihanna, the song blew up even more because it was Rihanna, right? So, I mean, that's the flexibility you could have and the versatility when you have these skills of being both a producer and a singer, or and a rapper, or whatever it is, right? So you keep these things in your toolbox, you're more marketable. Your career could actually span a longer time than just being one thing, right? And then not offering anything else. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Keep creating, keep being, active with all this, and get it done out there, right? So have yourselves a great day, and we'll talk soon.